The Drive with Tim Donnelly, 99.9 The Fan. Guess what, Graham? By the way, Tim Donnelly here, back after a week off. Graham Hill producing the show. Graham, you can take off the graphic behind me on YouTube that says UNC, and you can fire up the graphic for NC State, and then go ahead and fire up the breaking news. NC State's offensive coordinator, Robert Anae, no longer their offensive coordinator. NC State head coach has announced that Robert Anae, who has served as the offensive coordinator for the past 2 seasons, has been relieved of his duties.
That didn't take long.
I promise you, I did not time that up intentionally. I did not know that that news was coming at about 3:15 when that news was actually posted at 3:02 on GoPack.com, the team website. I did not plan that when I ranted against the play calling for the first 12 minutes of the show in the bowl game. The new offensive coordinator will be Kurt Roper, who's been on the NC State staff as mostly a running backs coach, but also a quarterbacks coach this past year. He was quarterbacks in 2019, running backs coach from 2020 to 2022, and then back to quarterbacks coach this year, 2023. First of all, let's talk Robert Anae no longer being the offensive coordinator of NC State. Whether you like Anae or not, whether you think he's a great coach or not, something needed to happen, right? I talked about this. You can't have a season like NC State just had, where the expectations included being a dark horse college football playoff team, and the finality is scrapping with ECU in a loss in the Go Bowling Military Bowl and finishing below 500 and all that. You can't have that season play out the way it did and not make major changes. Tony Gibson, he left for the Marshall head coaching job from the defensive coordinator spot, and now the head coach, Dave Doeren, makes the move at offensive coordinator. That was necessary. That was necessary. You needed change. Regardless of what you thought of the coaches, sometimes it's just time and you need new scenery, you need new voices. So Kurt Roper will take over as offensive coordinator. He will remain coaching the quarterbacks. Do you know what I love about that move? And this is, I'm not acting like it's, rocket science, advanced calculus. CJ Bailey is probably the biggest bright spot of the NC State season. CJ Bailey was the true freshman quarterback thrust into the starting lineup when high-priced, highly thought-of transfer Grayson McCall was injured for the year. CJ Bailey played very well, showed the flashes you want to see. You could argue CJ Bailey was the best true freshman quarterback in the country. He's already committed to returning to NC State next year. Now, even with an offensive coordinator change, you don't have a change in voices in CJ Bailey's head, right? Because the quarterbacks coach, Kurt Roper, now jumps up to offensive coordinator, will remain the quarterbacks coach. CJ Bailey has a relationship. You know that Roper knows what makes Bailey tick. You know that Roper knows what he is good at. Yet you still get a fresh voice. You still get a fresh play calling identity. And you get someone that Dave Doeren trusts. He's been around longer than Robert Anae has been around. That's the good of that hire. And these are all initial reactions. This news just breaking. My initial concerns about the reaction are hiring from within. Is it different enough? Right? If the offense wasn't what you wanted this year and promoting somebody up from within that offense, will it be different enough? And secondly, was this a hire you made simply because you didn't have many options? Right? Because the best coordinators out there are going to have options. They're going to have leverage. They're going to be desired by multiple schools. Multiple Power 5 schools will want to hire the best offensive minds out there. And if they get to weigh their options, right, the best offensive minds out there, they're probably not going to a school, to a coach where they don't feel there's great stability. There were 5 FBS programs in the state of North Carolina with a losing record this year. Dave Doeren is the only of those coaches, the only coach of any of those 5 programs that wasn't fired. right? Another losing season, what happens? Coordinators can read writings on the wall, right? They can read the room in college football and say 2 bad seasons anywhere is tough to survive, regardless of how much everybody loves a guy, regardless if he's the winningest coach in school history, regardless of a decade plus. 2 straight underwhelming years is tough to survive anywhere. So outside coordinators with options probably aren't super excited to sign up and hitch their wagon to that bus. Kurt Roper already being hitched to that bus, right? Their wagon's already riding along. Being promoted up may have been one of their only options. Either way, I don't want to say either way. This has a chance to be what the doctor ordered. It has a chance to be, hey, remember when they shuffled the deck chairs on the Titanic? Right? I on air, you always have to give your opinion, right? And hopefully many of you will give your opinion when we open up the phone lines here in about 10 minutes. You always have to give your opinion. There are certain times where you look at it and you go, it had to happen. I don't know if it's going to help. It had to happen. I don't know if that's the cause. They needed to try something new. New defensive coordinator, new offensive coordinator. That files into that category. Too early, too late? It's probably not too early. Could be too late. Do you know what everybody in that program should be judged on next year? If CJ Bailey is threatening for all ACC, he showed that kind of potential. And if Kurt Roper was hired in order to keep that stability and keep his development moving in the right direction, CJ Bailey should make a big leap next year, especially with guys like Cam Ward and a few others on their way out.
I was just about to say, the ACC's wide open next year as far as who's going to be the next powerhouse quarterback with, as you mentioned, Cam Ward no longer in the ACC, then Malik Murphy right down the road who transferred out. So the success of the offensive coordinator position for NC State has to be judged on, is CJ Bailey in the top conversation nationally as one of the best college football quarterbacks in the country?
And in the transfer portal world, is the offense exciting enough to attract talent? Is the offense exciting enough and features Bailey and Smothers and Noah Rogers and these guys enough, and gets the offensive line, who you always need to mention, excited enough that they want to stick around and others want to come play for them? You know, the 3 yards in a cloud of dust offenses aren't around very much anymore, and part of it is because rules have made it easier to be high-flying, and part of it is high school has gone so much more to a 7-on-7 world, so there's better wide receivers and passers available. Part of it is also, if you play a boring, not fun style of offense, people aren't going to want to play for you, and they can leave. I know some of you out there saying, what if it wins? I hear you. I'm just telling you, 19-year-olds want to have fun. 20-year-olds want to have a good time, and you know, that's something that I don't think the offense for NC State was doing very much this year.
And see, no disrespect to, well, not even this year, but last year too, no disrespect to Robert Anae, but it just felt like when he got hired from Syracuse, we knew that was going to be a high-flying offense. You know, throw the ball down the field for 20 or more yards on a pass play. But it just felt like we never really saw that. I get he took a bad situation and made it something last year with the whole MJ Morris situation and turned Brennan Armstrong into the savior of the season. But it just felt like the offense never delivered like it was promised when Anae was initially hired.
Here's what I think is going to be, metaphorically, the cause of death to the Robert Anae era in NC State's offensive history. When Robert Anae took over, and I actually have a history of covering him at previous stops, his reputation, his, you know, the thing that you hire him because was his versatility. He could look at your roster, figure out what every player did right, and build an offense that highlighted those strengths, right? The example I always used, and ironically Brennan Armstrong ended up transferring to NC State, was at UVA as the offensive coordinator. He led an offense by Bryce Perkins, where Bryce Perkins ran for 1,200 yards. He also ran an offense just a couple of years later where Brennan Armstrong broke every single passing record in UVA history with very little rushing contributions from the quarterback spot. Bryce Perkins, a quarterback that ran for 1,200 yards. Because of that, the 2 years that Robert Anae was at NC State, I don't think they ever got an identity. I don't think they ever had something that they hung their hat on. I just listened to former Panthers great Greg Olson. He was on with, I think it was Ryan Russillo on his pod. And Greg Olson said, you want to show me who the best quarterbacks are in the NFL. Show me what their team trusts them with on 3rd and 7. Right? If quarterback is given all the keys on 3rd and 7, I'll show you the best quarterbacks in the NFL. I think in college, it's you want to show me the best offensive minds, show me what they do on 3rd and 7. And when Robert Anae went into a 3rd and 7 over the 2 years here, I was never like, all right, he's got something cooking. It was either like a wild trick play that may work or something unimaginative. There was nowhere in the middle.